Okay. Good afternoon or good morning or good evening, wherever you may be watching this webinar today. Thank you for coming along. We really appreciate your giving us your time, and we hope that this is a very, very exciting and most importantly informative webinar for you as we go over some of the highlights, some of the technical successes that we've had over the last year or so, and focus on what the future holds for Torian, particularly with the drilling campaign that we've commenced in the last few weeks, with results beginning to filter through already, and what that looks like, where we're drilling, more importantly, why we're drilling, where we are, and what we anticipate some of the outcomes to be. So thank you so much for joining us. Joining us on the call on this webinar is our company secretary, Mr. Ian Pomensky, and our executive chairman, Mr. Paul Summers, and our exploration manager, Clauido Sherriff Zegers. Myself, my name is Peretz Schapiro, and I am an executive director at Torian Resources. We'll get straight into the presentation. This is the same presentation which was lodged on the ASX platform last week. So for those of you that want to bring it up yourselves, that's where you'll be able to find it. The highlights of Torian is, I think, most importantly, this is why it's number one on this list, and it always has been, is we are a highly active explorer. We have been non-stop drilling, exploring, boots on the ground now for about 14 months, since October of 2020. We've continued to explore, develop, and prove up, particularly the Mount Sterling Gold Project. And I think that says a lot about our commitment to investing the funds that shareholders have invested into the ground, and being able to develop in as quick time as possible the project and our landholding. Of course, as many of you would know, our location where we're based just outside of Leonora, which is a great piece of the world, a great part of the world, a great part of Australia, particularly of WA, where to make gold discoveries, with some tremendous discoveries and tremendous mines in the area. We're in the right neighborhood and the right location, and with excellent infrastructure as well. We're not far off the beaten track. The roads, mills, supplies, particularly now with our ownership of the station, infrastructure is not an issue for us moving forward. We do currently have about 120,000 ounces collectively between our two resources, both at Mount Sterling and Sterling Well. And of course, we anticipate that to grow both in size and in confidence when we have a new MRE in the first quarter of next year. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be continuing to explore over the coming months as we get right into this 17,500 meter program, this phase of our drilling program, which we're currently at. And that's driven by our really, really dedicated team, our management team, our directors, who are putting in all efforts that they possibly can to ensure that this project is as successful and this company is as successful as it possibly can be. Additionally, we've got a couple of other smaller assets that we hold, which are strategic in nature, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation. And that the anticipation of those assets are to be more immediate cash flow opportunities to help fund the company moving forward. Here's an overview of our directors and our management team, all very experienced, both from a technical perspective and from a management point of view, in putting the funds to work to ensure that we can get the best outcome and the best result possible. Here's our corporate structure. See, this is again from last week, with our top 10 shareholders, our board of directors, our management, and our cap structure sitting there, with our share price today of about 20 cents, leaves us sitting at about a $21 million market cap. Importantly, we should say, there's about $2.5 million of cash in the bank at the moment. Our flagship project is the Mount Sterling Gold Project. Many of you who have followed the company for a while would have known that over the last 12 months, this is really where we have focused our efforts in growing our resources and also making new and additional discoveries to generate new targets through which to grow additional resources into the future. The Mount Sterling Gold Project is, as was mentioned earlier, nearly not far away from Leonora, literally adjacent to Red 5's 4.1 million ounce King of the Hill mine, and not too far away from St. Barbara's Gwalia mine and other advanced prospects. The two resources on the project total about just under 120,000 ounces collectively, and we anticipate that to grow with a new global resource update in Q1 of next year. And finally, it's also the host of many really high-grade historical mines, particularly the Diorite King mine and the Little Wonder mine, which produced really high-grade gold about 80 to 100 to 120 years ago. And the workings are all there and the mines are all there. And we are, as you would be aware, following up on those as well, and have recently made the Astera Lode discovery near the Unexpected mine, which is right near that Diorite King mine area, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the presentation. I'll now hand over to Claudio, our exploration manager, who will talk us through the exploration program, particularly the drilling program, which we have coming up, the different targets that we're following up on, and what we anticipate to occur and what we're hoping for over the coming months. So Claudio, over to you.
Thanks, Peretz. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Look, I look back at October, probably a year ago, so some 30, 40 months back, and this slide looked very, very different. So we were drilling 31 holes into Mount Sterling. Those were 40-meter centers, so every hole we were putting down was basically leaving a gap of 80 meters between intercepts. The 2 months of drilling for those 31 holes turned into probably about a 5 to 6 month continuous drill period for the company, where every hole into the Mount Sterling gold deposit grew, extended it, expanded it. We've only just recently, as recent as this week, have started to infill the top portion of Mount Sterling. But just getting back to this slide, you can see where Mount Sterling merged onto the Visceria lode, and we got onto some high-grade mineralization there before hitting the Nexus fault, and we expanded the arsenic footprint all the way along the Viscerian shear, discovering the Hydra signature, which we released the maiden RC that the company's put in very, very recently. We got phenomenal turnaround with this program. Those holes were drilled within about a month back, and we've already completed the first 11 holes at Tyrannus. Once again, Tyrannus came about from an arsenic geochemical surface program. The unexpected development of Tyrannus for us was that it came about through auger vacuum drilling, which got oxide gold in holes from surface down to about 20-25 meters. It's not to say the whole of Tyrannus has got oxide gold. We've got data now from the first 11 holes where it is very hard rock from surface in the southeast, and as we've gone into the core of Tyrannus, we're getting some really nice material visually. Good visual oxides in between when we've drilled auger vacuum holes with 3-4 grams from the auger vacuum, so we expect some pretty good results from the central part of Tyrannus. Now, I always said that Tyrannus has got a lot of structural complexity, which is good. That means that we really have to stage the faces because we may not be drilling the controlling structure that's brought the gold in. What I mean by that is we're drilling a conventional Mount Sterling style, as in we are drilling towards the southwest, but we may turn the rig around to target the Ursus fault itself. And there might be some cross-cutting more north-south structures that may be hosting some richer gold there for us. So it is a work in progress, but we're certainly expanding our understanding. And we've got some very good encouraging auger vacuum to the northwest along the Ursus. And we'll continue to build that as we go both through the Ursus fault to the northwest and the Wanambi to the northwest. So there are some really good indications that between Hydra and the Wanambi Shear, some 2 kilometres further northwest, we're getting good arsenic and some very good numbers in the auger vacuum gold spectrum, as in the PPP scale, which we need to follow with RC. Just touching on this image again, so just look at the blue arsenic. So that's a 10 ppm, the lighter blue is a 20 ppm. The grey areas are the 100 ppm arsenic. There is a link, there is a clear link between gold and arsenic at Mount Sterling. It's not the case for every prospect, and it's certainly not the case for diorite. It works sometimes in Mount Sterling Central, but definitely in Hydra, and anywhere west of the Ursus, it lights up for us. Not so much to the east. There are some arsenic anomalies over, north of Blue Jacket, and there are certainly some subtler anomalies. What that's telling us is that there's potentially more oxide over a couple, and maybe the systems are a little bit deeper. So we'll get onto that, and we'll tell that story as we produce some regional updates in the very short. Next, I can give you a bit of an update as well with the auger vacuum. So we are planning on testing the Mount Sterling Well West. So this has come about over the last month and a half. You can see all the cluster of arsenic anomalies associated with structures, which is exactly how we planned our program. We're definitely on mafics with granitic intrusions underneath, and it's got 3 very good ingredients. One, we've confirmed the arsenic. We have structure as it folds around into the Mount Sterling domain and orientations. And we're looking at linking the Mount Sterling Well West with Hydra at the moment as well. So in very, very early in the new year, you'll see this bump expand up to Hydra with the contouring. And the contouring comes about from auger vacuum data. It doesn't come around from just surface data, it's a mixture. So we don't necessarily send everything in the auger vacuum for assay. We select the high grade ones, and when we get some good results, such as Torian, where we've expected arsenic numbers and a little bit of gold to follow in vector, we actually got economic grades of oxide in the auger vacuum, which was unheard of. So we systematically assay all that drilling, not just the best arsenic per million of that auger vacuum. That's why you have a higher density of auger vacuum assayed from that prospect. It was purely on the gold assay and the caliber of those assays. So we are just as we're learning that arsenic has got a direct correlation, we're also seeing that it's not always the highest arsenic that has the gold. So we are systematically assaying, say the first 50, the first 100 holes of our original auger vacuum programs, to see where in that drilling we have better gold numbers. As I repeat, it wasn't always the best arsenic number. So there are quite a number of auger vacuum holes. We are expecting quite a number of them back. Certainly not in the order of 300 to 600, but more in the order of 100 to 150, and that's every month to month and a half. So that's a really nice. It builds targets and it progresses those targets along the pyramid for us to RC test and obviously add ounces.
Do you want to talk more about Mount Sterling Visaria in particular before we move to the next slide, or ready to go?
We've just finished the preliminary 11 holes at Torian. So one of the rigs at the moment has started as of yesterday on the shallow Visaria up dip extensions. So we've already completed about 5 of those holes. And this is the part of the program where we're increasing the confidence of the Mount Sterling Visarian resource of the top 125 meters. So we are expecting some pretty nice numbers. It's a very good continuous system. I do expect these grades to come above the global grade for the deposit, and that's just based on that it's a super gene enrichment, and then it does tie together. When you look at over the 800-metre expanse of what we've defined so far, there's not one section that doesn't have good continuity on it. So yeah, look, I am expecting some very good results from the updip drilling, and we'll then move on to the extensions, the southeast extension in particular, and the northwest a little bit later on as the rig availability becomes. Skywing was a reinterpretation of what we released as the eastern loads, and this was basically we were looking at the Red 5 Tamula sort of model. There was an uncanny coincidence that Tamula itself was a series of about 10 to 12 subvertical reefs, quartz, very high grade, some very skinny, some up to I think 4 or 5 meters from memory. So we were chasing that model, and it fit, as in the overlay of the Tamula system on the far west linked to our Mount Sterling Viserion, and we had about a 1 to 1.1 kilometre width to the system. So we then went on to try and define some of the better grade ones, as in drill underneath to test that subvertical position, and we missed. We missed on the initial first couple of holes. So rather than continue to drill, we stopped and halted that program. It's a principle. If you're not getting what you're getting, you should stop and review. And we quickly reinterpreted what we were seeing, and everything lined up to this shallow orientation. Now, the next part of Skywing's journey was, is this just saprolitic gold, or is this actually primary now in the hard basement? And it is a mixture of both, as in you can see that the furthest western intercept on pretty much every one of the Skywing interpreted position is highest on the west. So it's numbers of 8 grams, 16 grams. I expect that to continue because of the supergene enrichment. As we move towards the east, in this case a little bit towards the northeast, the way it's positioned in space, every single one of those intercepts, those good piece points and red ones, increases ever so slightly. So we're moving away from the supergene and we're into hard rock. Remember that each of these sections from Mount Sterling to the east, you're actually going up in RL. So the hard rock becomes very, very soon, if not immediate, and you lose the room for that supergene, or you lose the mechanics of that being able to have occurred. So it's not to say that does not occur to the northwest, because you do have quite a bit of oxide there. So there is potential for further saprolitic numbers and the primary in the basement as interpreted in this model. And I think the joy we'll have with Skywing is the continuity as we go towards one or two things. The mafic rocks, the doleritic and mafic rocks may provide a physical barrier, or one of either the Wanambi or the Ursus will provide that physical barrier. So I do expect Skywing to continue to expand a little bit further than what we've interpreted. It just seemed a nice shape in space to be at least 800 by about 250 meters to begin. We had to begin somewhere. So we will test this probably 1 to 2 holes in every one of these sections, then review those results. But I am expecting these assays to continue to gradually increase. And it's, if you take the time and have a look at each of these intercepts, you do see that every intercept to the east, northeast, is a slight increase of the intercept to the southwest. So we see these relationships at Sterling well, and it's almost like, you to simplify it, think of a slippery slide, and we're on a very good part of the slippery slide, and as it flattens out, we'll get into better material, and then if it steepens up, we'll get into the half-gram material as well. We see this at Sterling well. We see this in a lot of systems that are sub-horizontal to sub-vertical systems. It's quite cheap drilling, it's quite quick drilling, So we're leaving it till January, just because we know we can get through it fairly quickly. And obviously we wanted to get some numbers from Sturdy, Tyrannus and Hydra, so we could review and plan those programs as Skywheels get drilled.
So Claudio, before you start talking about Hydra here more at depth, just a couple of questions that have come through already, and I just want to answer them. There will be a opportunity for Q&A following the presentation. So there's a Q&A button there on your screen. You can type in a question, and we will get to them following the presentation. And this webinar, the intention is for this webinar to be recorded. All things going well, it's being recorded now, we hope, but you never know with technology. So in case it's not, and you don't want to miss it, please stick around. Claudia, if you want to continue, and also if you could just speak a little bit louder, please. Just some people have just said they're having some trouble hearing.
Sure, we'll go a little bit louder, just a bit of distance from the microphone. Okay, look, Hydra had a couple of historical holes, and a couple of meters at a gram. 1.9 was the highest tenor grade, MSRCO 2021. We initially did surface XRF, got some very nice arsenic up to 3000 ppm. Then we got some very nice zones, white zones by 100 ppm. We tested some of the initial target zones. The image has been updated with the recent drilling. However, I can tell you that we're encouraged by that it's not just the 1 or 2 meter system. We have got a width of about 5 meters, not to width, probably 2 to 3 meters to width. And interestingly as well, the mineralization that we achieved in this space was not an order of magnitude above the diagram 90, but it certainly was into the 2 and 3 grams. And we can recognize that we haven't fully tested the contact which that came from. So a couple of unexpected, we've hit some ultramafics, we've hit a porphyry, which once again, the porphyry is associated to the Mount Sterling mineralization, and we haven't crossed the football contact of that porphyry, which is interpreted to be the highest grade. So it's almost an eastern position to Mount Sterling analogy. So the first things I would do once we get the rig availability for Hydra would be to cross that contact on a couple of sections, which we've already drilled, and to understand the structural relationship as we come back to the southeast. There is a little bit of movement. It's not a continuous target zone. There's probably 2 or 3 step downs, which is good. It's telling us there's cross-cutting structures, which in turn tend to increase grade for us and also provide sub-parallel repetition. There's a couple of quite exciting areas in Hydra where the whole stratigraphy holds around. We're not targeting that yet. We're simply going to fall into those trends. I'd rather chase the structure and come around as we see other structures playing off, or maybe that holding on itself. And we're definitely chasing it back towards the southeast because we are drilling that better part of the 4 or 5 holes which were originally planned in the southeast. So in a way, the drilling at Hydra has resulted in us probably having to focus probably another 700 to 800 meters to chase the better parts of what we have found at the northwest of the prospect. And it's very much open every which I mentioned, with a lot of prospectivity for repetition there. So we've got the right rocks, we've got plenty of structure, we've got massive parasitic links, and we're starting to see gold not just on the contact of the porphyry, but perhaps on the porphyry itself, which is significant. So yeah, lots to follow up, and looking forward to getting a rig back up there. The Tyrannus, so now obviously I look at this differently with the knowledge of the 11 holes we've just put into Tyrannus. The central part has come back the best as expected. We haven't tested all 14 targets yet. There's still probably a good half of those to go. We have tried in 2 key places to scissor drill, as in it was looking pretty good towards Mount Sterling and that 237-240 orientation, so drilling towards the southwest. However, we did try a couple of holes to drill towards the Ursus itself, and they've come back pretty nice visually. So all those assays, all those samples are now at the lab. We're expecting some very good turnaround with those. And just bear in mind that this drilling finished a day and a half ago. So the last hole from Tyrannus, that 11th hole, went in a day and a half, and it's already at the lab. So that's a massive commendation to the field crew we have in place and what they've been able to achieve as well. I do think we're going to get this response before Christmas, which will be very, very nice. The auger vacuum in conjunction with the XRF has given us a lot of structure to follow, both in the Wanambi and the Ursus, and you can see the arsenic light up in between. And in particular, I guess particularly, you can see that the arsenic, where you see it adjoining one of the mafic high mag units, just go up to the furthest northwest at Peretz, 625. In between, those ones in between are very interesting because they are in very similar positions to Mount Sterling. However, there is a lot more strain in these, and I can just expand on this. As in Mount Sterling, you have a fault, which we named the Viserian shear. Here, you've got this package of rocks in between two substantial faults, so a lot more strain. That may not necessarily mean there's more gold, but it's not a bad place to be. We're also looking to expand from the Skywing drilling as far as we can into the Viserian domain, into the Skywing domain. And there is another link here that we can see in the magnetics and we can see in the structure where you have the workings in these little workings just next to 518, right there, that's it, Peretz. There's a north-south, or it's more a north-northeast, south-southwest fault that comes and actually joins onto the Mount Sterling southeast. And we've got a hole in the southeast with, from memory, about 7 or 8 grams, which links. So it may be that the gold controlling structures could be these linking north-north-south structures. A lot of work to do structurally at Tyrannus. And you'll see the value of the criss-crossing RC. It almost mimics a diamond hole for you, not quite. But then again, at the rate some RC contractors are charging you, you might as well go diamond these days. So that's another topic. We might touch that a little bit later on. But yeah, look, it's looking very, very good for us at Tyrannus, and it is a you know, we did make the conscious decision to go for oxide quite some time back, almost immediately after the initial MRE, and this is paying dividends to that changes in focus and strategy. So it does pave the way for more oxide to be found along the Ursus and on the subparallel structures associated with that Ursus fault as well. Sterling Well, it's just a bit of a, it's a great place to have a rig when you're expecting some weather. It's a great place to have a rig when I guess, you know, especially now with the weather, we've had quite a wet year. There are some extensions that we had some technical success with, in particular the high grade we hit on the southeast, the 16 grams, the 3 meters at 650. So we were hoping to get a repetition of the shallowly dipping ore, and we could see in a fair few places, some key holes, historical holes, that there was noise every 40 meters, 80 meters, there was a little bit of noise. Not necessarily economic, but we believe that we could potentially hit an economic area, and we certainly proved that with that hole 37, SWRC 37. So that came about from 127 meters down. The important thing to appreciate about this hole is that all 4 holes surrounding it didn't go to that depth. So going back to the model, that when you're in a very good part of this slippery slide, you get the ounce material, where we're very close to that area. I don't believe that 16 grams is the best. We certainly drill around it and we should get some a little bit better and some a little bit less. And you could open up a whole extension to the southeast for us. The other very good development at Sterling Well was that we are finding these mineralized gold lodes in mafic rocks as well. So we've got evidence on the western side of the granite that there is mineralization in the mafics, which bodes very, very well for Mount Sterling Well West for us, the whole package of rocks in between the granites to the north and to the northwest, and towards the nexus fault. So immediately north of the position of the resource at the moment, of the main resource, that 1 meter or 1.85, I think it is, it does prove that the mineralization is in the mafics. It's quite shallow here. That's from only 10 meters, so it does give us a little bit of room to work with, but that should be dipping towards Mount Sterling. So we'll chase that once again to the high mag doleritic unit, just 100 meters to the east, and then we'll see if it changes to a subvertical domain or if it continues on a flat trajectory, perhaps halfway to Mount Sterling. So a fair bit of room to move with Sterling Well. We simply haven't been back to Sterling Well just because we had another 4 or 5 good targets where we were adding potential quick ounces, and it's just another of our high priority targets that we'll get through prior to inclusion for the end of Q1 MRA next year. So this is the original unexpected. There were the initial phase of drilling at Diorite, which targeted more the geochemical footprint. It targeted more the lithological contacts. We reviewed that data, we processed everything. It took us a while to get multi-element data with the lab delays. I don't think, at least from my end, we never got close to walking away from Diorite, but we certainly needed to do the work. We needed to gain an understanding for the structure. So it was a long time coming to get that understanding. And we tried it at unexpected, where the first hole of the second phase got the high grade in the initial hole. I think the first 5 or 6 holes, 12, 14, up to 25 grams. We're now in the process of getting the down dip continuity. So we're only waiting on one assay from that initial hole. It was a comp that came back with some grades, so we're expecting that down dip continuity. I'm not reading too much into the grades. I just need to confirm that the system is alive, as in there's still shearing, there's still good indication that the mineralization is there, and there is plenty of room to move to the southeast, as you can see from the number of shafts in that orientation. Sorry, the shafts in that neck of the woods as we go to the southeast, and we'll cross a north-south fault. Now, those north-south faults are key. We need to understand those before we go and put to realise out the progress we have for Little Wonder and some of the other high-grade deposits and high-grade occurrences down towards Diorite South, so to speak. That structure, the north-south structure, and these northwesters, southeasters are key to gold and diorite. Also understanding not just the contacts and structures, but also the folding that gets created when you mix all these. And we have advanced an enormous amount, even though we don't have the arsenic linked to mineralization, as in this gold at unexpected sterilite has no arsenic whatsoever. It is helpful to understand the geochemistry of all the other base metals, because they do give us some insight into where to chase the high-grade gold. There's about 30 odd shafts for high grade between Unexpected and Little Wonder. They all sit just to the west of a granitic contact with great structure. So there's a lot of job we're going to have there over the next 12 to 18 months. And we're not forgetting about the eastern side of that granitic contact. So it's a work in progress. There is some regional updates with what we're seeing from the surface geochemistry, and we'll probably be looking at bringing that out in the new year as we finalise the planning for. We're probably looking at testing, I'd say, 3 to 5 high priority targets between Unexpected and Little Wonder, culminating in the Little Wonder maiden program. So here's some work out of Mount Sterling Central. We've got an enormous amount of data. We don't talk about the XRF data or the progress made, other than when we give you an update of the contouring of the arsenic data. It is a phenomenal amount of targeting it provides us with, too much, I would say. But it is starting to pay dividends, as in, I do expect a very similar, if not better, discovery into the 2022 year. It is throwing some unexpected things at us, so that's very, very interesting. And I guess just watch this space on that. We are seeing less and less arsenic as we work our way down to diorite. We knew that. And we are getting into some very, very good prospectivity. And now it's a matter of really making the ranking, the prioritization and ranking of our targets, because there will be limited progress we can do. So it's a matter of deciding where are we going to add the most value. It seems to be a mixture now of the high grade 2 oxide, and obviously quantifying as much into the indicator category as we can, so that they're real mineable ounces that we're.
Okay. Claudio, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So at this point, I'll just take the presentation from here, if I can get my mouse going there. Some of the other smaller activities of the company, of course, our main and almost not just priority, but almost our singular focus is with our exploration program, proving up a resource, making new discoveries, all at the Mount Sterling Gold Project. Some other, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, some other activities with the company is involved in a tangential way, and essentially seeing it as seeing these activities as ability for the company to bring in some cash flow and potentially do well on an investment side of things. So the Mount Monger spin-off, obviously, as shareholders would be aware, Mount Monger was a package of tenements which Torian had inherited about 5 or 6 years ago, very underexplored by Torian, and whilst highly prospective, and as can be seen by some of the outstanding drill results which Monger Gold was able to achieve about a month back. It was a highly prospective project. However, the reason why the company decided to spin it off was not to dilute the Mount Sterling Gold Project. So Torian wanted to spend its funds and raise money for the Mount Sterling Gold Project, had to raise money for both projects. It would be an increasingly dilutionary event. And therefore, by spinning it off but maintaining some of the upside, and that's over 10% in the company plus 20% in the JV, Torian is able to ride the upside of Monger at no cost. The Tumala Station acquisition, again, this is very strategic for us. This is the pastoral station and the pastoral lease, which the majority of our Mount Sterling project actually sits on, including the Mount Sterling and Sterling Well deposits. The pastoral station has a number of businesses which run out of the station, including cattle, an accommodation camp that's quite strategic for us as well. The accommodation camp is where we stay, our drillers stay, other exploration and mining companies in the region also hire those rooms to stay. So it's a cost saving for us and also a way of bringing some income to the company. In addition to a mining services business as well, it's a cost saving for us, whether it's clearing pads or any other earthworks that we need, and as well as bringing in a little bit of cash, because it is an activity and a business which is utilized by others, some of our peers in the region. In addition to carbon credits, that over a 15-year annualized basis, the company will receive approximately $360,000 a year in carbon credits. We see this station and the pastoral station as very strategic for the company, but not to take away from the company's primary focus, which it obviously is the gold exploration and proving up more and more ounces as we go through the coming weeks and months. And finally, is a small investment that we have in a company called Bullion FX, which is trying to build a gold-backed crypto. The company is still in its early stages. It has had a couple of listings already on some crypto exchanges. It's something that we have sitting there in the background. It's not a distraction for the company at all, but it's just upside for us we anticipate that at this stage, which is coming out of an early stage startup and something starting to mature as a company, and this exciting space of the merger between crypto and gold, which is a very, very exciting space to be in. We're excited to have exposure to that, and we anticipate and hope that would pay dividends for the company and provide a windfall for the company into the future. So that concludes the formal part of this presentation. As you can clearly see, we're a team of a management team and a geological team, an exploration team that's highly committed, professional, and really working as hard as we possibly can to prove up the Mount Sterling Gold Project. We believe we're sitting on something really, really significant, and we've been saying that for a while. And we continue to prove more discoveries, we continue to find more gold, we continue to increase our resources. So this is a story which is unfolding in front of our eyes. It's an exciting story, and it's a story which I'm excited to be a part of. And I'm sure I speak for Paul and Claudio as well, as a very, very exciting company to be a part of right now as we continue to grow into the future. With that, we'll take questions. I see there are some questions that have come through. So first question we have here, what percentage of our land has been drilled for testing? So Claudia, what percentage of our tenement holdings, that's 75 square kilometers, what percentage have we actually drilled?
It really depends by drill testing what you mean, whether it's RC, whether it's auger vacuum, whether it's, look, it's a very small percentage. I would say it's far less than 2%, and I'll explain. Our job resource is out of one tenement, arguably two with Sterling work. And we've got a lot more ground, 73, 76 plus plus the extra ground we've applied for. So in excess of 80 square kilometres. So it's I'd say less than 2% we've actually drilled. It's not to say we're going to drill 100% of that area, but I think the takeaway point is that we're getting resources from two of our tenements out of all the 10 we have.
Yep. Next question is, Peretz has said that we have an estimated 120,000 ounces. Also said we have an estimated 200,000 ounces. Which one is it, 120 or 200? So just to clarify there, we currently have a JORC compliant resource, a global resource of just under 120,000 ounces. I don't remember saying 200,000. But obviously that 120,000 is what we have now, and we anticipate for that to grow as we continue this drilling program, and we have our mineral resource estimate coming out in Q1 of next year.
I'd just add, Peretz, that 120,000 is what we had when we released the MRE back many months ago.
That's right. So it's probably larger at this point.
I guess because we continue to drill.
Yeah, and once we do the JORC resource again, in a couple of months' time, we should anticipate that to grow. Another question here is, if we get out of an ounce $800 after costs, well, we haven't yet done a scoping study, so we can't confirm that that is definitely what our costs would be, but assuming that would be the case, are we not worth at least $96 million at the moment if we went ahead with extraction? Yes, I mean, technically, if that was the all-in sustainable cost and we went and mined the gold, I guess you could say that that would be the value of the gold that we currently have in the ground. However, exploration companies that are not yet producing are typically not valued at their final amount. There's always a discount applied to exploration companies that are not yet a producer. So what that discount is obviously depends on what the anticipation is for bringing these ounces into production. Why is Red 5 doing so well and they are right near us? However, our gold in the ground keeps going up and the value keeps going down. How is that possible? So yeah, to tie into the previous question, Red 5 are a producer already and will be producing at the King of the Hills, I believe. They've said in June or October of next year. So yeah, obviously as a producer, there's a higher multiple applied to their valuation. We have gold in the ground. Why is our share price going down? I don't know. I don't know why people sell. I know why people buy, because we're a great company, and I believe we're incredibly undervalued at these levels. But yes, as our drilling continues, as we continue to find more gold, you would anticipate that the value of our company would continue to increase.
Perhaps maybe Claudio will just shed some light on the history of King of the Hills and where they are now compared to where they were, and compare that to where we are.
Yeah, I guess it's had a fairly turbulent history. Different owners. Some people made a lot out of taking and seeing new things with different eyes. So just to give you an example, it was a high-grade narrow vein operation for many years, and then it wasn't until it changed hands in ownership and a geologist went and sampled what they thought looked pretty bad grades. However, it was diamond core and it looked nice alteration. And I thought, I wonder what that goes. And it went 0.3 over a couple of 100 meters. And Tamula went on to become what it is, King of the Hills now. So some big companies let that asset go. It is now a 4 or 5, possibly more million-ounce proposition, licensed to print money. So that's why they're doing so well. A phenomenal mill right at our doorstep. Some of the oxide dirt that will feed Red 5 are very similar to the deposits we're seeing in the Ursus on our ground. So Red 5 doing very well is very good for us all. There's certainly a lot of things that are good for both companies going forward, and we're keeping a very good relationship with them. We certainly have an interest in what they're doing, being so close to them. We basically go past their waste piles and pits and cranes and mill every day when we're out there. We have a lot of good communication now. We're sitting down for a weekly meeting, not just logistics. That's where the relationship is at this stage. Quite different from a pastoralist, relationship. It's more an exploration and just making sure our activities don't get in the way of their activities and vice versa. But I think our ground is just, if not better than their ground. If I was to have a look without any deposits, take away all the deposits in the region, and if I had to choose their ground and my ground, I'd tick out our ground over Peretz, our ground over many, many other factors. So it's just, we're looking at it at different time scales, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great that we have such a great neighbor right nearby and sharing some of that experience with them and similarities of what we have as well. what is the company's long-term strategy and where are we currently on that roadmap? So as we've discussed, our strategy is to continue to prove up the Mount Sterling Gold Project, continue to build on the ounces that we have, and to continue to make new discoveries with systematic exploration of our ground. If we think back to where we were 18 months ago, we had 2 targets and about 40,000 ounces all up. Now we've got 120,000 ounces and over 7 or 8 high priority targets with gold confirmed and at those targets. That's continuing to grow. That's just in a matter of 12 to 18 months. Even 8 months ago, we had 2 or 3 targets. So we're really continuing to grow, to continue to prove up the ground. And where do we sit on that is, from 1 or 2 targets to 7 or 8, from 40,000 ounces to 120, that will continue to grow, that 120,000, and so will the amount of targets that we have, and thereby the discoveries that we make. We really believe we're sitting on something quite exceptional. It is a fantastic region, and we're proving that with the number of discoveries that we have made and that we hopefully will continue to make moving into the future. Claudio, do you want to add anything to that at all?
Yeah, look, Peretz, I guess it's important to understand as well, we now have 6 active drill areas. We have 20 plus high priority targets still untested. There's still 43 priority targets which came about from it was a geophysical, it involved the magnetic data, so quite some geophysical and structural focus. There's still 43 of those targets we have to get through. We have over 60 geochemical targets. 60, I've had to cut it down because it is in the hundreds. And I'll repeat that all of our ounces right now, or the majority of our ounces, are coming from the one tenement. So there's an enormous amount of upside. We are in the position where we have to be quite ruthless with our target ranking so that we are able to add the most value early on. And it's always those second or third order targets that give you the goods, as in, your better ones may not necessarily live up to the expectation, but those second to third order ones definitely do. And it is, look, it is a continuous result. You spoke the MRE by Q1 2022, so at the end, it is a continuous overlapping process. To get to the million ounces, you have to go past your 200, you have to go past your 250,000 ounces. It's a journey. And we are definitely sitting on million ounce ground. So it's very encouraging.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting, as I've said earlier, where we are in the journey and where we can go. Some questions here. Any plan to extend the expiry date of the options? It doesn't need shareholder approval. So at this stage, we have no plans to extend the date of the shareholder of the option conversion. And the reason is because we don't believe, whilst the price is down now, as I've said earlier, I believe we're incredibly undervalued, and therefore we don't believe that the price will stay around here. And we firmly believe that those options will be in the money come February. So that being said, there's no need to extend that expiry date. Yes, that is very much where we believe the company will be at that stage. Now, there are things beyond our control, obviously macroeconomic conditions, and we'll have to take it as it comes. But from a pure business perspective, from a company point of view, we believe those options will be in the money come February time. When will the updated MRE be provided? Will it be prior to the expiry of the February options? It's a good question. It's possible. It just depends on, as has been mentioned in the past, what the drilling turnaround, the drilling efficiency is like, and most importantly, obviously the lab turnarounds. That's actually been really good compared to this time last year. We've had exceptional turnarounds, the exceptional work on the field, as Claudio mentioned earlier. We just finished Torian a day and a half ago, and it's already at the lab. So it is possible that we have an MRE before February. It just depends on how things are going at that time and how what we do from here. Somebody else has asked if we ever intend to produce. Well, look, at the end of the day, every miner started off as an explorer one day. And at this stage, where our focus is on exploration and on further proving up the goal that we have, we are taking some steps towards that in terms of pit optimization, potentially a scoping study to come after that. But our focus really right now is on further exploration. Production is, not something that we're thinking about, in terms of tomorrow. That's or next quarter per se, or in June next year. But it is something which we, I guess, will continue to grow on us as we prove up the ounces, as we get that optimization study done, the pit optimization study. We look at it, what a scoping study looks like. So we're definitely taking steps in that direction. Our directors looking to purchase shares given we think it is significantly undervalued. Yeah, I'll be looking to purchase shares. I've purchased shares recently. I could speak for myself. I can't speak for the other directors. I purchase shares at higher prices. I believe that is undervalued. Will I purchase shares today or tomorrow? I guess it depends on what I have in my account, what I have available. But yeah, very likely it's incredibly undervalued here at these levels.
Yeah, likewise, Peretz. I mean, the options are extremely undervalued, so I'll personally be getting into the options when I've had the opportunity to do so.
So from 2% of our ground, we have confirmed we have 120,000 ounces. Does that make us incredibly undervalued? Well, I guess if you look at it that way, the 120,000 ounces is really, really just the beginning of our exploration strategy, of our exploration activities, I should say. Somebody's asked, Claudio, did you say that you would take our ground over Red 5, over Red 5's ground, as someone's asking if they've heard you right?
Yeah, look, I'll clarify. Let's take away the deposits and just go on historical occurrences. Red 5 is a massive mine of granite. So, this is why companies walked away from it. Sure, there was high grade on top of it, but once they mined that out, there was not much prospectivity. So when you look at the satellite deposits, I do believe we have better potential for satellite deposits to Red 5's caliber, I guess. They have been exploring those for many years now. They haven't been, sitting idle. So they did find a couple on the Ursus and some satellite pits around the place. So sure, if I was looking at their ground and our ground without Red 5 Tomula, I would lean towards our ground, just on the strain, on the structure, on the rocks. We're closer to a lot of other granites than just a singular granite count for Red 5 is. I'll ask the question in reverse. Who is likely to find more ounces in the next 18 months? If we take away any ounces that will come out of Red 5 itself, let's discount those two and ask ourselves the question, where are we likely to find more peripheral ounces? And yeah, any day of the weekend in line, I'd go for it.
Yeah. Now, as I said, we've always said that this ground is very, very exciting ground, and very, very good ground. And we continue to see that as we continue to make these discoveries. Can people in the USA or Canada have access to buy TNR? And do we have marketing overseas? We're not listed on the OTC, however, it doesn't prevent people overseas buying shares. We have some significant shareholders from overseas in the US and Canada. And there is marketing activities being conducted overseas for those investors. Again, other questions about options, which we answered. So, Claudia, this is an important question. I think that something you should answer. Initially, there was a strategy for 2 MREs in 2021, and that's been changed to 1 MRE in 2022, in Q1 of next year. I mean, there might be more next year, but that's the only one we have locked in at this stage. What do we say to investors to restore confidence that we can meet strategic objectives and milestones?
Okay, well, that second MRE was to do with Sterling Well. We put, from memory, 15 holes into Sterling Well, confirmed some of the historical intercepts. We extended with about half of that program. We then put another 17 holes into Mount Sterling Well. So we are in a position to provide an update just for Sterling Well, but we thought, why, when we could just do a global one and encompass all the other targets? Bear in mind that we had to stop drilling at Sterling Well as some of the other targets pit Sterling Well in the caliber of potential and prospectivity and value we could add. So Sterling Well right now is probably sitting third, fourth. So as we get rig availability, it's obviously easy to throw a rig at Sterling Well, and that is the plan. I mean, you know, we haven't walked away from Sterling Well. It's still very much going to contribute ounces to the global MRE. We just didn't see the value in providing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 MREs when some of these prospects are just getting off, you know, onto the feed and starting to walk for themselves. There was a lot more synergy providing a whole global MRE with the focus and strategy to target our oxide and achievable ounces. There's no point adding inferred ounces to something we're never going to mine, or it's not attractive for somebody else to come and mine, but there's real value in getting shallow ounces, readily achievable, taking the metallurgical risk out, and obviously diminishing the mining risk because it is from surface. So that's where we are. The other issue with the MREs, I guess, is you know, the asset turnaround contributed to us kind of delaying things, and now we have a lot more availability of rigs, not for long terms, but definitely for shorter terms. The pricing of the meters is coming down, and we haven't, you know, when we were drilling a year ago, we were locked into some pretty hefty contracts and pricing of meters, whereas now it's a lot more competitive. We're doing it and reviewing results so that obviously it's more value per ounce per meter, and that will all unfold, I guess, as we look back in Q2, Q3, 2022 and look back.
Yeah. So look, and just to summarize there, you know, we made the decision at the time last year that putting in another MRE just on Sterling Well would not get bang for our buck. Bang for our buck would be to spend that money putting more holes in the ground, and getting a global MRE with all these new targets, new discoveries that we've made over this year. And we can say that we've delivered and we've beaten expectations, particularly in terms of when our results are filtering through much faster than we've ever had in the past. And I would say, you know, faster than almost any company on the ASX, with, you know, from when a hole is drilled to results coming back in under 2 weeks. I think it is an incredible achievement, and we hope to continue to be able to do that. Whether we can get it in 2 weeks all the time, 3, 4 weeks, you know, that's pretty fast. That's pretty fast, and that is also great knowledge that we are able to learn on the go and then redirect rigs based on those results, because we're getting those results so quickly. So look, our strategic objectives remain to continue to systematically explore the Mount Sterling Gold Project and grow the ounces, and we'll do that through periodic. The ounces will be through periodic MREs, but we intend to continue to explore. It relates to the next question here, which is, how would you rate the cost incurred per ounce of gold proven so far? Is it high? Is it low? So I would say that till now, definitely the first 100,000 ounces is always your hardest ounces to find. And Claudio, you could elaborate on that a little bit more. So it's the beginning of that discovery is always going to be more costly. We anticipate moving forward that the cost per ounce will decrease for a couple of reasons. A, we know where to look to make those discoveries. We've had this systematic method of using a very cheap form of drilling, the auger vacuum, then scanning that with the PXRF. And then we have putting those RC rigs in the right space, in the right places based on that data, enables us to decrease that cost. And because we've made those initial discoveries, which are more expensive, that should reduce our costs moving forward.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, Peretz. The cost was rather high, and it's the drilling efficiencies went there. The preferred drill contractors went there. So it was a time in the industry where you just have to get a rig, no matter what rig you could get hold of. Otherwise, we would have sat idle. The cost of sitting idle is by far worse than the price we paid. At least it gets us to, got us runs on the board, and we definitely have a big board. We have a lot of places to go and infill the better parts of Stirling this area. And as we'll see, there'll be plenty to follow up at Tyrannus and Hydra, plenty to follow up at Dara East in particular as well. There's still a lot of planning down that neck of the woods. And obviously in testing some of the high ranked targets that's coming out of Stirling Central, and as we move towards that focus between Dara, King and Lee Wonder. I do expect the drill rates per meter drilled at least to reduce drastically, and it's big because of the contractors we have now. 2022, our assays have gone down as well, and the speed at which we get meters and instant almost assays in this time, as mentioned, Brett, is really what's paving the way to be able to have 2-3 rigs at a project. So, it's something we'll take on through January, February, and the results will speak for themselves once we get, obviously another interim MRE and then build on to the next milestone for us.
As TNR looked at having the exercise and the options underwritten, it seems we absolutely need the $5 million cash flow for February 2022. Yes, obviously, as an exploration company, although we do have some income coming in from some of our other activities, ultimately, the exercising of those options would be exceptionally helpful in funding our further activities. We are looking at potential for having those options underwritten. But as was asked earlier, what do we anticipate to happen with those options? We anticipate for them to be in the money. There's no reason why they shouldn't be in the money come February, considering the results, what we're seeing on the ground, and what's happening in terms of our exploration program and success. We definitely anticipate those options to be in the money come February time. And the question continues, and if they're not in the money, what is plan B? Well, we're not really anticipating for them not to be in the money. That's no secret. As an exploration company, we're always going to have to raise money. But the anticipation at this stage is that will come through our option holders. Is there an opportunity to liquidate some Bullion FX tokens, or do we have a handshake agreement to hold for a period of time? There definitely, look, in terms of Bullion FX, something which is kind of sitting off to the side, there is, whilst they have done a number of listings, there isn't a lot of liquidity at the moment for us to liquidate our tokens without significantly affecting the Bullion FX, the price of the Bull token. We don't have a specific agreement for hold for any period of time, the tokens that is. And yes, given the opportunity to liquidate in a strong market, we would absolutely do so to bring in some cash. Someone's asking, just referring to the overseas US and Canadian investors, how do they buy? Well, US investors, as far as I'm aware, can buy through Fidelity. They're able to buy shares in Torian Resources, but it's obviously not investment advice. And they should look into how to buy Australian stocks on the ASX. What is the status of the Tamula loan from that British company from Riverford? Yes, good question. So we took out a loan for 3.27 million. That loan is down to 2.4 million at the moment. And we are of 2.44. The next payment is not due until late January. At this point, we are actively pursuing a refinance of the station, which should enable us to repay that loan in full.
Brett, on that point, you may want, there's been some conjecture about the escrow of the directors. shares in respect of that funding. And we should make the point that we no longer have our shares escrowed to the funder because of the level of repayment that has been made today.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, in terms of the directors' shares being escrowed, yeah, that was the case. When we took that loan, directors provided a guarantee and escrowed about $1.7 million of personal stock, both in Torian and other companies. And that's no longer escrowed, being that we've drawn down we've been able to repay a significant portion of that loan. Given the accommodation camp is in demand, are we looking to expand the room numbers? Paul, do you want to take that question?
That's a good point, and it has been the subject of discussion at board level. We are exploring the possibility of increasing the rooms up to the approved 50 rooms. We've been continuing to make improvements at the station and reorganise the station to suit the needs of those in the area and Torian. We're looking at rationalising some of the equipment. Some of the civils equipment we have out there is too large for the requirements we have. We're looking at selling some of it, acquiring others, and getting on the sale of some of that equipment. We should most likely get a substantial cash benefit, which we may then direct towards additional accommodation units. The figures in respect of accommodation reflect good profitability, and if you have machinery sitting on site that's not being used or is redundant to the needs of ourselves and those in the area, then we're better off converting the value of that machinery to an accommodation facility that would be rented or leased on a regular basis. From the figures we've determined on a very conservative basis, additional rooms would generate additional good revenue for the pastoral station. So we are seriously looking at that. We're also in discussions with parties whereby we could expand the camp on a joint venture basis and share the profit and share the cost as well. So we're looking at all opportunities. There are changes now coming to pastoral legislation, which is going to expand the ability of pastoral stations to undertake other activities. We see that as being an enhancement of value of the pastoral station, and we look forward to that legislation being passed in Parliament soon.
Someone's asking, can we have more webinars during the year? This is great information for shareholders. Yes, look, we try to do these webinars at significant points. There's no use doing it every month or every other week. If we release information to the market, but when we start a new program, when we have an MRE release, those are the times, the opportunities at significant junctures of the company is when we feel it's appropriate to have these. That being said, we're always amenable to calls or emails from shareholders, and as shareholders would know, those that ring me, I'm always willing to take their calls. I know Paul is as well, and discuss the company moving forward, what our strategies are, how we see things. So yeah, you don't need to wait for one of these webinars per se. You can definitely pick up the phone and give us a call. So have we made analysis to where our cost per ounce stand compared to other similar explorers? It's a really difficult thing to work out, and the answer is it depends where an explorer is on the journey. So if an explorer already has 200,000 ounces or 100,000 ounces and they're continuing to grow that, that's going to be cheaper than an explorer that started at a much lower base. Also, it depends on the tenor of the grade, right, and the type of ground that they're sitting on. So it's difficult to make a very simple analysis and a very simple comparison to other explorers. We try to keep our costs down as much as we possibly can. We try to be as frugal as we can with our funds. It's not our money, it's shareholders' money. And we want to make sure that we can take that money and let it go as far as possible. So, that's always at the forefront of our mind. Sorry if it's already been asked. 316 auger vacuum sample results from Tyrannus. When will they be given, please? Told weeks ago it would be in a couple of weeks. Claudio, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's been hundreds of auger vacuum holes drilled. Initially, we were sampling just the very best arsenic 1 sample from each auger vacuum hole, sometimes including the other hole, which is kind of industry practice as well. Those 316 were 316 individual samples from probably about 40, 50 auger vacuum holes, not 316 different holes. Because Tyrannus, you do an auger vacuum program, and don't forget that auger vacuum is limited to oxide. You hit hard rock, and that's the purpose, to identify what hard rock you have, and obviously get a very clean sample from the oxide all the way down to that point in space. Because the caliber of those results was outstanding, as if I expected maybe 100 ppb, maybe half a gram, but I certainly wasn't expecting up to 8 grams in an auger vacuum hole and a cluster of 3 to 4 gram material. But because we got that, we decided to go back and assay every meter associated with that higher grade gold. So those 360 came about from that. And you can, if you go back through the announcements to do with Tyrannus discovery, and we've summarised it in a table in the latest announcement, you can see that the initial holes hit some gold, and you can see that those 316 holes expanded that gold contouring and saprolitic oxide. Gave us a lot more intercepts. So there are a lot more auger vacuum holes along the Tyrannus trend that have only been assayed for 1 sample. It is a process of systematic analysis as well. So we're up to the first 100 auger vacuum holes, which covered Mount Sterling and this area, and a little bit up to Hydra, the space between that trend and Sterling well. They're the assays that are now at the lab. There's about 50 to 75 holes for a few hundred auger vacuum samples. Those are not priority turnaround. So we run those on routine turnaround. Obviously, any priority, those jobs just can get lagged behind. Eventually they'll come. I am expecting those first 50 to 75 holes probably before Christmas, and we'll continue to put 50 holes just systematically, each month. There is value, although it costs money obviously to put samples and assets in, but there is value in running all that auger vacuum for gold. And I base that solely on the premise that there are free gold occurrences that will never pick up through arsenic vectoring, and it only takes 1 or 2 of those holes for that style of mineralization to occur within our ground. That makes all that sampling worth it. I can't overload the lab with 2,000, 3,000 samples either, so it is just trickling in that to manage the assays we absolutely need for inclusion into the MRE. So it's a juggle, but it's working very, very well. And once we put out, we give away enough to allow investors to see the amount of targeting and extra, the amount of a pipeline of targets we have, for the company going forward. Those auger vacuum results just continue to feed into that target. So it's a forever giving process, because the AV is very cheap. We get good production, we get phenomenal data, and it's really lighting up our understanding, not just on the gold front, but on other potential opportunities that lie on our journey to get obviously gold value for the company.
Thanks, Claudio. So mentioned earlier that the options, I believe that the options will be in the money by February 2022. Why do you think they'll be in the money? As I mentioned, I just believe we are really undervalued, and with the results that are to come and what we're seeing on the ground, I believe that we should be at higher levels. That's why I believe they'll be in the money. Now, obviously, we can't control broader market forces, and that being, general market sentiment, particularly market sentiment around gold, which, to be honest, is not at it as the way it is the way it is now is not what it was 12 months ago. But that can change really, really quickly. And got with the gold price in Australian dollars, the way it is now, close to 2,500 Australian dollars. I know we're not producing, but it does, that's what creates sentiment. It's pretty much the average price of what it was last year. So I do anticipate sentiment to change around the gold, around gold in particular, as a macro, from a macro perspective, with all the inflation that's going on around the world, and interest rates still very, very low. And even if interest rates begin rising, they're still quite low, or very low historically. So these are really good conditions for gold and gold sentiment. And I believe with our activities moving forward, that our options will be in the money. Do I hold? Someone's asked if I hold 15 million 2-cent options. No, I held just under 10 million, and they were all converted into shares about a month ago or so. And where do I suspect the share price to be? Someone else is asking at the time. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. I'm just saying from a fundamental perspective, we should be at a higher level, at a higher valuation at this stage. Somebody else has said, thank you, you are an eternal optimist. Well, I guess you have to be very optimistic to be in this game. That you're not going to get very far being pessimistic. And being optimistic, I'm a firm believer. If you think good, believe it will be good, then you make your luck and it will be good. So if you think positively, we will get positive outcomes.
Peretz, we might want to address this about St. Barbara. There's a question here that St. Barbara.
Just getting up to that one right now. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So St. Barbara have stated they may dewater some of their dormant pits in the Leonora area and recommence production. Are there any on the Tumala station? Yes, there are, and Paul could elaborate on that.
Yeah, the main one that everybody's talking about is the Jasper pit, which is a large body of water that's formed from a former high-grade pit. I've spoken to St. Barbara. They intend to de-water that pit and drill at its base. It's a deep pit. The station manager and myself are in discussions with St. Barbara in respect of using that water for the purposes of the station. Yes, it is very close to the station homestead, only a couple of kilometres from the station homestead, and quite close to King of the Hills.
Again, just someone's asked again about the options and about conversion. So as I said, we anticipate the options to be in the money. Don't have a crystal ball. If they're not, then well, we obviously hope that they will be. But we will have to raise money at some stage. Now, it's not going to be in February, I can't imagine. We have plenty of cash now. As I said, over $2.5 million in the bank. But we are an exploration company, and with better than most, that we do have some cash flow, but not enough to cover drilling programs. There's no secret that exploration companies will have to raise, will always need to raise money, whether it's through the options or whether it's through what I prefer to be through with in a least dilutive way as possible, which is by a rights issue or an SPP if possible. But right now, our intention is to raise from those listed options, which we intend to be in the money in February time. Doesn't appear that there are any more questions. Thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. It's been a pleasure taking you through everything in depth. We hope we're able to answer some of your questions and to provide you with a great overview and a deep understanding of our project and of our program. As I said earlier, please, if you can, if you have questions ongoing, please feel free to call, to email, to reach out. We always want to hear from you. We always take advice and ideas from shareholders all the time. At the end of the day, as a shareholder, you have an ownership in this business and are entitled to ask and provide advice. And as directors, we'd love to hear from our shareholders. We want to know, what others are thinking. And often, we hear some really, really good ideas. And and things which really help us as directors grow this company. So thank you very much for those that are actively engaged. We really appreciate it. Someone's just put in a last question. Will there be any news flow to get the oppies in the money? What kind of news flow? There will be news flow constantly with regards to the results that keep coming from our ongoing programs, which we've discussed at length throughout this presentation. I'd like to thank everyone for their participation today. And Claudio, if you want to have any last words, or Paul, any last words?
I guess from my end, Peretz, we've got 15, 20 holes at the labs. We're drilling another 15, 20 holes before the break. So there's considerable news flow to come from now to Christmas and throughout January and throughout February. So we're certainly putting more meters than ever before into the project. So that's going to provide us with plenty of results and good results to follow up with as well.
Right. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate your attendance here, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Wishing everybody well over the summer holidays. Hope you have a wonderful time with your family, with your loved ones. And we wish everybody best of luck and much success in the future. See you later.